Few fictional characters have made such a long evolving impact as DC Comics' Caped Crusader Bruce Wayne aka Batman, who resides in Gotham City. This is a character that has been taken in several forms and spawned into several franchises like video games, comics, and TV series besides the movies. This is a character everyone is familiar with, and during this Batman the Caped Crusader we will take a deep dive behind the mythology of the famous comic book character. Batman was created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger in 1939. The character showed up in the DC issue on March 30, 1939 as a strip. The duo tried to create a new character after Superman, even though Bob Kane has been credited solely all the time and is primarily the one who gets the credits. Finger is one who often becomes forgotten. In Hulu's Batman and Bill, it explains and depicts the story of the unknown co-creator Bill Finger and how he has contributed to the success. The most recognized trait of the character you might find in Sherlock Holmes, with Wayne's detective skills that he provides during his evaluations and investigation. Another one that has been supplied is Thoreau, how it culminates in creating an urban hero, a legend. His personality as a billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist has been one of the appealing characteristics adding to his character. As you might already be aware, the character doesn't have any superpowers like Superman or Spider-Man. Instead, he's been through a childhood trauma when his parents are killed, and he seeks to justify their death through his crime fighting in the corrupt city of Gotham. Compared to other superheroes' evolutions, Wayne resonates with his audience in a different way. It's a more human-driven background, which makes him a character easier to relate to. For the time being, it's been over 80 years since his comic book debuted in Detective Comics and have mesmerized readers and audience and fans worldwide. The creation of Kane and Finger has been a phenomenon and continues to bring in the big money for studios even today. One thing that the first issue of Batman has contributed is how stories are told and what effect trauma has on the main character. Bruce's parents' death has been reinvented in other stories and pushed the trait of an origin story. A similar origin is told in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. He becomes an orphan as a toddler, and which impact it has had. The trait is still dear and viable. The character is gloomy and dark, and the pages don't make the reader happier at times. The crimes are often gruesome, with murder and serious crimes, a sign that the character and the world behind it aims for a more mature audience. Golden Age of Comics between 1938 and 1956 is described as one of the best times for a comic book reader, as the invention of animation were discovered and the Disney Corp made money on their now classic cartoons. Superman was also a new character combined with Batman. Even Wonder Woman and the Flash and Spider-Man grew up during this evolving time in the American comic book business. Few have made an impact on it, as Stan Lee has, with inventing a character that people can relate to, despite having superpowers. Maybe that's what Finger and Kane had in mind creating their detective. Probably not, who knows. But as we know, Stan Lee worked both for Marvel Comics and DC Comics during his prolonged career, a true legend in the industry. Neither Kane nor Finger will ever have the status or impact Mr. Lee has conquered, but Batman has still been a successful character. Even during the turbulent times of World War II, Donald Duck becomes a part of the war propaganda in the USA, and Batman gets a new friend. Robin, aka Dick Grayson, comes introduced in the strips as his crime-fighting partner. Batman during the 1940s had also war propaganda films and racist stories. Most of the popularity is what Kane has laid as a ground for a character that doesn't belong to a fixed period, only on how the material is produced for the audience, and that's why the audience resonates with the character itself. The stories have a certain template that makes the story write itself. Alfred Pennyworth, Commissioner James Gordon, and Catwoman Selina Kyle. All these are returning characters. Most prominent are probably Gordon and Alfred as Wayne's closest allies. During the Golden Age of comics, Batman founded Justice League with Superman, also known as Clark Kent. There are some of the debuts that have left an impact on the character and the mythos behind it. This gallery of villains returned several times later, even during the Silver Age of comics, when Adam West and Burke's performance of the character became a more of a serious thing. With both a TV series and a film, the Plinky Ploy series ran for 120 episodes, gaining the recognition of the character even more. Its approach is more of a adventure-like display of today's gloomy dark defender. Between 1966 and 1968, the series ran and earned 3 Emmy Awards nominations. Most prominent as well is Cesar Romero's incarnation of the Joker, which has made a certain impact on the antagonist. For a while, between 1970 and 1980, few stories about our favorite detective shared the screen with anyone else. Nothing peculiar happens in the cinema area with the character, mostly because iconic comic books were written and reformed the character in a major way. Up until 1989 and Tim Burton's iconic films, comic reinvented the character as we move on from the late 1960s to the more serious 1970s, and it reflects on the pages. The 1980s have been named the modern age of comic books, or more accurately, dark age of comic. The latter is mostly due to influence of Miller's Batman and Watchmen. His comics grew large during this time, and in the 1980s, Frank Miller's masterpiece, The Dark Knight Returns, turns the whole shebang around with its retelling of the character as an old, bitter man returning after retiring as a superhero. Frank Miller stated, quote, "He was created in 1938 and the character was just ruthless in his method, terrifying to criminals. Over the years that got softened and softened because people started thinking that comics had to be just for kids and Batman had to be made much nicer, and eventually no kid could relate to him anymore," unquote. The story Miller crafted during the mid-80s has given a lasting impact for decades that still resonates with the superhero even to
no more. All the people I've murdered by letting you live.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Tim Burton's incarnation of the detective hero sprawled and stirred up some Batmania once again. This time it was a different interpretation of the famed gloomy Caped Crusader in a new, exciting way. As for 1989, Michael Keaton brought something different to the character's enigmatic aura that still resembles modern times superheroes. Despite 30 years later, things like Batman theme, certain element returns to the character once again. The whole aspiration of the mythical character was established, and the audience returned to a different hero, much inspired by the comic book era from 1970s and the 1980s. Film has been appointed as the original story that has inspired not just the 90s escapes of films, but also the animated series that DC and Warner Brothers created, one of the most successful animated series of all time, taking responsibility for this superhero trend. Quote, ever since I did Batman, it was like the first dark comic book movie. Now everyone wants to do a dark and serious superhero movie. I guess I am the one responsible for that trend, unquote. Interestingly enough, the story of version follows up in a comic book 6-part issue, as it continues after Batman returns. The comic book ignores the disastrous interpretation of those characters such as Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, as this film was a global success. Both financially and critically, it dominated for a brief moment at the box office. Keaton, a low-key comedian, broke into the superhero genre that before this film was a forgotten face in the past, with Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, and Kim Basinger at the front performance. A new era of dark superheroes was introduced. With its wit and charm, it has been established as the pillar of modern storytelling concerning heroes. It took up to 3 years later for the sequel to arrive, and with the Joker gone, Penguin and Catwoman took the clown's place instead, and is more formidable follow-up than the first. Despite the errors that plagued the second film, it holds a different stroke to the detective's journey to defeat each villain. Batman Returns with Michelle Pfeiffer, Christopher Walken, and Danny DeVito is far darker than the former, enabling the character to span wider in the larger scope. With these characters, it gets occasionally messy in the plot, as it tries to deliver despite an interesting performance of Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Danny DeVito is playing the Penguin in this version of Gotham, a penguin humane morph creature. An orphan child learned the linguistic basics such as speaking and reading, which is an impossible task to do when growing up with penguins. Sadly, the 2 other installments didn't improve the rest of the charm that the first 2 reincarnations had on the character of Batman. The follow-up to our beloved hero was with Val Kilmer and George Clooney in and Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, respectively. Joel Schumacher has afterward apologized for the ridiculed low quality both these films has given. These films are still part of the film series working in the background, even though a few people are showing a liking for these films. They could be compared to the Star Wars atrocity of the prequel that the toxic fandom has butchered for years now. Some hate the Star Wars prequel more, some dislike the 90s Batman more. Batman Forever showcases two villains that are considered popular in the modern incarnation of the Harvey Dent Two-Face, played by Tommy Lee Jones, joins the team with an unnecessary quirky Jim Carrey as the Riddler.
There is no way for me to save them or myself. This is all one giant death trap. Judges?
Tim Burton was still one of the producers of the film. Even Chris O'Donnell has commented on Batman's nipple due to Joe Schumacher's homoerotic theme. Quote, "It wasn't so much the nipples that bothered me, it was the codpiece. Press obviously played it up and made it a big deal, especially with Joe directing. I didn't think twice about the controversy, but going back and looking and seeing some of the picture, it was very unusual." Unquote. Batman and Robin is the worst of the pair, considering how it played out for both George Clooney and Chris O'Donnell, which was decent. With a cast of Uma Thurman and Arnold Schwarzenegger, one hopes that it would play out in better shape than it did. George Clooney even refunded people watching this film after filming said, quote, "I think we just killed the series," end of quote. What's ironic in this case is that many fans consider the 1989 version of Batman a modern classic. Michael Keaton will even return as the character in the upcoming The Flash movie. While Burton's incarnation of the character, true to its originality and redeeming the comic's true essence, the film series went sideways from being a culture phenomenon in the very late 1980s to becoming one of the most hated Batman films that many disregards as lousy and unethical in many forms. It also shows how the producer's unbalanced form of retelling due to the massive criticism and negative reviews Batman and Robin received. This project was scrapped. The unproduced film was to include Jonathan Crane and Scarecrow as the lead villain, Harley Quinn as the backup character with the Joker returning just to fuck up with Bruce and Batman's head thanks to Scarecrow's toxic gas. The late director wanted to make a more mature film to justify the character. Schumacher felt that he, quote, owed Batman culture a real Batman movie. I would go back to the basics and make a dark portrayal of the Dark Knight, unquote. The script for Batman Unchained, aka Batman Triumphant, has been available online for a while now. When you're reading it, you can see there is an obvious conflict and a deeper relationship between Batman and Robin. There is also a circus scene with Harley Quinn as she is introduced, a scene that hasn't portrayed in modern interpretation of the character. Even the response to the film of the 90s was critically bad for obvious reasons. Maybe the studio got greedy, went on the roll, and didn't know how to handle the success of the first film. However, the decade shaped the beloved character, and Hollywood hasn't stopped producing films about the hero ever since. After the scrapped projects of Batman in the early millenniums, it was now up to Christopher Nolan to bring a reimagination of the classic hero. He was given the task to write and direct the first film. It takes the story back in a modern sense in terms of the origin story of the Wayne family. The moment when Bruce becomes an orphan and later on the Caped Crusader. Batman Begins star Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Liam Neeson, and Katie Holmes, to name a few unsung heroes. When Nolan first joined Warner Bros.' ambitious voyage of redefining the the popular character together with screenwriter David S. Goyer. Director himself wanted the film itself be grounded, something that was absent in prior films. The first film has adapted The Man Who Falls, a short story by Danny O'Neill and Dick Giordano, which is a film adapted from Bruce falling down in a well. What is different with Nolan's vision of the character is that Gotham is no longer an isolated island, but it exists in our reality. Under the influence of Blade Runner from 1982, he tried and successfully created a story that was appealing to the younger audience, just like the adults. With that in mind, it was produced for children in between 11 to 12, just because Nolan wanted to create a film he wanted to see as a child. Before no gore or blood was shown in the film, it is a film where Keanu Reeves, Anthony Hopkins and Ashton Kutcher were even considered for roles. If those roles were cast, it would become a different film to begin with. It's the first comic book film to ever been awarded an Oscar for an actor role. This was intended posthumous for Heath Ledger, who portrayed the anonymous Joker in the film The Dark Knight. Unlike other versions of the gallery of Batman's iconic villains, Nolan's portrayal of the main villains is reckless, chaotic, and unpredictable. This gives a sense of an uncontrollable story, the antagonist steering the narrative. The approach in the film is mostly inspired by The Godfather and Heat, two films about crooks. The film is also deeply inspired by Frank Miller's interpretation of the famous killer. David S. Goyer, Jonathan Nolan, and Chris have multiple mention in the press that much of the story based on Miller's storyline. One is Batman Year One as a basis for Batman Begins. The filmmakers have also used Batman The Long Halloween as an inspiration to delve into the relationship between Batman, Dent, and Gordon to stop Joker's erratic, irrational, psychotic behavior. Nolan has said that the film sees Batman from Joker's perspective. The Joker becomes something else in the film. He's the main character from the beginning to the end. At first glimpse, when he takes over the bank robbery and kills his teammates, he is in possession of the story and commands the narrative under his own terms. That scene where two men with clown masks bang a window to smithereens, escapes to the other side with a wire, was done with an IMAX camera. This marks the first film to use that technique. Now it's standard to make filmgoing a more exclusive experience. Speculation has been around that Heath Ledger overdosed due to his eccentric performance, but this is false. One of the facts that we know about him is that he isolated himself for 6 months at a motel in order to test Joker's voice and personality. It was also during this time that the character intended to evolve. Thus, the rumor that his fixation on the character would lead to his death is a myth. As we know by now, Nolan is a practical guy when it comes to practical effects, even if certain shots are replaced by CGI. A lot of the character from Joker is based on Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange from 1971 with Michael McDowell. It's a film about a British anarchist gang going rogue in a dystopic future. In the interrogation scene, it might be difficult to realize it, but Christian Bale actually hit Heath Ledger with all the force he can give. The scene is key as it pivots the whole films. It's also what the Joker and Batman finally meet for real. As you know, Dawson and Dent were kidnapped in their last meeting. It's a terrific, intense scene that plays out. It's about both goals, just as both are each opposite. But Batman is only one bad day from becoming a persona such as Joker. We know by this point in the film that Joker pushes Bruce Wayne to become something like him, to push him over the edge. By the end of the scene, Joker gives a clue that leads Batman forward. It's first when the Joker is at the gala searching for Harvey Dent. Instead, Joker encountered a clash with Batman. Released in 2008 with the controversy around the casting, and the film is declared officially the best comic book film ever made. It precedes all other superhero franchises that even Marvel Studios didn't prevent. Batman with this film proves that an old character can be rebooted and modernized if the tool is used in the right way, in the right tone. The rebooted story doesn't need unnecessary elements unless it fits and prevails in the plot. 4 years later, in 2012, Nolan wanted to end the whole franchise with the sublime title of Dark Knight Rises. It takes place 8 years after the events of The Dark Knight, TDK. Bruce Wayne returns to his mansion. It was never used in the middle film, and in this, it takes place in time before he joins the fight with the terrorists. Wayne returns to his mansion. It was never used in the middle film. It takes time before he joins the fight with the terrorist leader Bane, who sets Gotham in chaos and drags Bruce out to fight once again. This film is the conclusion of over 10 years of planning and filmmaking. Hundreds and hundreds of people were involved in creating an atmospheric Gotham that pushes boundaries in what could be done. There's a lot of day shot in this final film, creating a different tone overall. It's not just as gloomy as a prior film in the trilogy. Few of these shots were shown in the other ones. This film stinks out as a white sheet against a black background, as it foretold a myth that in the end forms the whole narrative. Trilogy in this form lands with Ra's al Ghul's legacy and sort of revenge. But in the film it is visioned that Bane is not the real villain. He is just an obstacle for Batman. He's the weight and muscle, as you will later learn that Ra's al Ghul's daughter Miranda, played by Marion Cotillard, would be the real antagonist and stab Bruce in the end. Bane was just a front to protect her, which is detailed frequently in the film. Bruce's past with Liam Neeson's character is a neat conclusion, and there is some retribution for Harvey Dent, who was killed in The Dark Knight. The film handles the theme of pain. Batman Begins had fear, and The Dark Knight dealt with chaos as a theme. Say that this film's approach is an action superhero compared to DTK. It has more character that plays final roles. There is a generation shift between characters and a deeper understanding of the character of Bruce Wayne. It established Alfred's worries for Wayne Manor, even behind what happened with Rachel. The story also takes up ending scene, which is partly paired with a concluded part. It's a more open and wide narrative. It's not a thriller like The Dark Knight or an origin story that we experience in Batman Begins. It was first written in 2010 by David S. Goyer and Jonathan Nolan, a story everyone could get behind. Nolan wanted only 3 films, a trilogy, to be able to create a story worthwhile. Principal photography commenced in May and concluded in 2011, then have a premiere in 2012. Sadly, the film was affected by the mass shooting that took place in a theater in Aurora, Colorado. It would cause the ticket sales didn't precede Tim Burton's Batman from 1989. At the event, 12 people were killed and 70 people were injured. At that moment, the perpetrator told the audience who was watching The Dark Knight Rises that he was the Joker. After the horrible shooting, Christopher Nolan made a statement on the Colorado incident. Quote, "I would not presume to know anything about the victims of the shooting, but that they were there last night to watch a movie. I believe movies are one of the greatest American art forms, and the shared experience of watching a story unfold on screen is an important and joyful pastime. The movie theater is my home, and the idea that someone would violate that innocent and hopeful place in such an unbearable, savage way is devastating to me. Nothing any of us can say could ever adequately express our feelings for the innocent victims of this appalling crime, but our thoughts are with them and their families." Unquote. This forced the studio Warner Brothers to end all marketing and theater that were planned worldwide. Actors from the film spoke out, and there was a disarray surrounding the horrible news of a perpetrator doing that to theaters. It's obvious that this shooting affects the overall performance of the film at the box office. It's also obvious that it's still tainted by a bleak memory. As a film, it stands its ground both as a sequel and a concluded film that wraps up everything neatly with most things thought out. Even if Nolan pushes the boundaries of what Batman can and should do, the human side of him comes in strong contrast. He's a dreary character most of the film and whiny. Once he gets back on his feet and starts kicking and fighting, planned out in detail or lives up to the 8 years that passed is gone. It's a different garden. Few locations are revisited in this film compared to the others in the film series. A few instances are used once again. The tensions is gone, even if there are a lot of emotions. There's no driving force as we get a more relaxed, withdrawn Bruce. A lot of the old arrogant Bruce is shown with few tendencies. After the rollercoaster that The Dark Knight provided, it's hard to stop it. Christopher Nolan in this film proves that he can make a beginning, a middle, and an end. We know that also that Nolan cut at least certain scenes in the final film that didn't make the final cut. And Nolan is not the director who uses extended cuts. We should at least be proud that we got this almost flawless film, because the overall aspect will never return again anytime soon. He knows how to direct 3 standalone films that are not obviously dependable on each other, but at the same time follow a coherent narrative that works. Compared to the films Batman from the 1990s, Nolan has come a long way. His films are regarded better and far better at the same time. Burton's films remain classic. Then we have director Zack Snyder, who took the crusade of Batman on a totally different path. The Marvel Studios' successful attempt at a Marvel Cinematic Universe failure has given the whole concept a distressing signal to the fans that DC and Warner Bros. Pictures won't be able to fulfill the success their competition has had. This failure was first introduced in Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, a film that shredded everything connected to what Batman stood for. Although DCEU is not only about Batman, but for the purpose of this video, only the Caped Crusader will gain focus. Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice was a product of an ambitious setup that never came to a sophisticated conclusion. Batman's role in DC Extended Universe is short and unnoticed. In BVS DOG, Zack Snyder brought Ben Affleck into an old, rushed Bruce Wayne, drowned in old memories and hate, who looms in the shadow. This was also a team-up film with Superman and Wonder Woman that thereafter erased that was exciting initially. Affleck dedicated his life, a short performance dragged in a world of irrational behavior from producers and parent production company, which in turn caused a disastrous road trip for the beloved hero. In this film, he kills, is gloomy, and has a hate relationship with Superman of an unanswered conflict. Lex Luthor is also part of the film in a self-destructing way, pushing the two heroes against each other. Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, Lawrence Fishburne joined the cast in 2015, adding Jesse Eisenberg. Snyder comment, quote, "Having Jesse in the role allows us to explore that interesting dynamic and also take the character in some new and unexpected directions," unquote. Eisenberg eccentric, disastrous acting made Lex Luthor not easy to take him seriously. The whole film from 2016 is and was a controversial film that achieved mixed reception from fans and critics. The film achieved $422.5 million during its opening weekend. Overall, it landed on $873.5 million, but during its week it dropped historically. Suicide Squad was another film. Shortly after BVS, and Affleck had a brief moment in the film fighting the Joker, played by a bat-teethed Jared Leto. Affleck had a short appearance, which didn't affect the film's overall horrible quality. Affleck's next appearance was in Justice League. It was an attempt to showcase Batman in a group, something he can't handle properly. It's a themed-up film that doesn't fix the problem of contingency or the plot problem from the series of standalone films. Another desperate try creates continuity, despite that Wonder Woman and Aquaman did get their own movie, but Batman with Affleck never got his. Affleck's interpretation of this character is rough and determined in a way that splits him from another version of Wayne. It is a film that includes Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. Batman and Wonder Woman recruits their team after the untimely death of Superman to have him rescue the world from Steppenwolf and his army of parademons. The film has been under development since 2017. A filmmaker like George Miller was even attached to direct. The story didn't give a satisfactory result either for the audience, the critics, or Warner Brothers, who lost over $60 million from the film. After Zack Snyder lost his daughter to suicide, Joss Whedon overlooks the proceedings. Whedon's harsh attitude during the film's production has met with criticism from Gal Gadot and Ray Fisher, making it a failure at the box office. The audience still wanted Snyder's version of the film, and he met their wishes with an extended version of the film. The whole production was of trouble and issues right away from the beginning. The script had major changes, just like the principal photography. Snyder's version of the box office failed film was released on March 18th on HBO Max in 2021. This film, unlike the theatrical version, stays away from the shared universe and continuity like the other films. This version also achieves a far better reception than the Joss Whedon cut. After Justice League, Snyder's cut in slightly over 4 hours, which proves that after a reshot and a determination for a director's character have achieved great response from the audience. The character won't show up until The Flash, which is expected to arrive in theater in 2023. Both Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton are expected to reprise their roles. A lot is uncertain with Warner Brothers as they change their decisions every year. A lot is uncertain with Warner Brothers. A lot is uncertain with Warner Brothers as they change their decisions every year. Their films don't work out as they plan, and their cast makes the outcome a troubling issue. An issue that makes remarks on a broken franchise that initially tried to copy from Marvel Cinematic Universe. DCEU is their current largest franchise. They do every attempt to rescue it from drowning. The animated world of Gotham and our favorite Crusader goes without saying one of the most crucial part of the mythology behind the character. It's cheaper and easier with the cartoon genre and makes action scenes that would either cost too much or would be not possible as a live-action film. Batman Mask of the Phantasm is one of the first films that was animated with Batman in the latest canon. It's from 1993 with Kevin Altieri, Boyd Kirkland, and Frank Parr all sharing the directing duties. Kevin Conroy, who has been honored to voice Bruce in other productions as well, is a renowned name when it comes to animated features such as TV series and films of high production value. It was the first film set in DC's own animated universe, and the productions took 8 months to finish. The first film in animated form was a satisfying start for DC and Warner Brothers animation department. Shortly after the release, Batman the Animated Series came, and everyone gasped at its sincere brilliance in getting the groove back for the hero. It's still, after 30 years, considered the best animated series out there. This was a series that contained 85 episodes and again featured Kevin Conroy as Batman and had Mark Hamill voicing Joker in a recurring role, which later on has become a nice gig. It was in the 90s a major milestone for the animation industry and many shares fond memories of it. It's job to be the best animated series ever made after The Simpsons. Conroy talked with Mark Hamill when watching the animation for the first time. I was really blown away. I turned to Mark and I was like, did you have any idea we were working on something like this? But the series didn't start in 1990s. Instead we must go to the 1960s to look at the first series, to the Adam West moment in the spotlight as Bruce Wayne. The adventures of Batman was segmented into a collective Batman Super Hour. It ran for 17 episodes and followed up on Adam West's popular live-action show. It was also called Batman with Robin, the Boy Wonder.
Batman and Robin, dynamic duo against crime and corruption, whose real identities as millionaire philanthropist Bruce Wayne and his young ward Dick Grayson. Watch out, villains! Here come Batman and Robin!
Super Friends, which ran for 93 episodes between 1973 and 1986, had Batman joining something of a Justice League team. Batman was companioned by Robin. It was cancelled twice before it was axed for good. It was even in this series that Batman and Robin joined Scooby-Doo in 2 episodes. Each episode was 44 minutes long and featured Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Batman and Robin. Super Friends was followed by the ill-fated The New Adventure of Batman.
Greetings, Bat fans. This is Batman.
Adam West and Burt Ward reprised their role from the 1960s. It was filled with bad ideas, as there is only one season with 16 episodes of the series. Back in the 1990s, after the success of Batman the Animated Series produced by Bruce Timm, DC and Warner Brothers Studios produced the new Batman Adventures, which was on air between 1997 and 1999. It had a new style for its 24 episodes. Harley Quinn was introduced properly. This was short after the disaster of Batman and Robin was released. Batman was the profit maker the studios were good for, so another film was greenlit. Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero from 1998 was another project Kevin Conroy was involved in. Shortly thereafter, Batman Beyond was another project. It's set within a cyberpunk, futuristic Gotham City. Batman retires due to a heart condition. Bruce thereafter gives an teen named Terry McGinnis the suit and role of the Caped Crusader. It ran between 1999 to 2001 with 52 episodes. Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker premiered in 2000 in an edited version. Then in 2002, in an uncut version, a film directed by Caped Crusader. It was a continuation of Batman Beyond, Batman the Animated Series, and the New Batman Adventures. It was also the return of Mark Hamill as his interpretation of Joker that has later on become a very popular character of his. Studio released an edited version of Joker's death due to Columbine High School massacre in April 1999.
So where should I make ground zero? Gotham General, where our hero's dear little Dana is recuperating?
Joker lived in that version, but because of the online petition, fans more or less forced the team to realize the real uncut version. It's also the first film of Batman that uses digital ink and paint. Another batch of direct-to-DVD and TV series spawns has come after his film. It's too many to mention exactly here. We move on to Batman Mystery of the Batwoman. This film from 2003 is set before Batman Return of the Joker, or continuation. The Batman, a series between 2004 and 2008, and with 85 episodes, was one of the more divisive aspects of the Caped Crusader. Batman was in this series voiced by Rino Romano. It has its own style. It also introduced Batgirl, Robin, and Martian Manhunter. Batman the Brave and Bold is like a modernized version of the Adam West series. With 65 episodes between 2008 and 2011, it follows Batman teaming up with someone famous from the Silver Age. It was a fun and appreciated series by kids on Cartoon Network. Besides the original canon, we have Batman Year One and Batman The Dark Knight Returns, which is based on Frank Miller's comic book series. The series stands out from the others of the story. Batman Year One from 2011 is basically an original story about Bruce Wayne in his first years, as the title tells. The other one, from 2013, is a retired hero. It returns to fight crime. Peter Sellers voiced the broken protector in both parts. It's a film split in two, directed by J. Olivia. At one moment, the producers wanted a live-action film of the story, starring Clint Eastwood. Another film that is worth mentioning in this is The Killing Joke, an adaptation of the graphic novel of the same name. Kevin Conroy was Batman. Is a big chunk of prologue with Barbara, or Batgirl, that gained controversy, so the filmmaker added it in anyway, adding even more problems. Bruce Timm voiced fans' concerns. Then we have Young Justice from 2010 with at least 98 episodes, and Beware the Batman. Young Justice details the life of young heroes and is still running on HBO Max. Well, at least the fourth season. Beware Batman added a darker, grim turn on the Caped Crusader, and Tony Rivera played Bruce Wayne. What's different with this one is that it never followed other storylines. Batman and Harley Quinn from 2017 were released with Sam Liu as director. Kevin Conroy returned as Batman again. It's the 29th film based on DC Universe animated original movies. Like so many other movies, it cuts below the 90 minutes. Bruce Timm also wrote the story for this one as well. In this film, Batman meets Harley Quinn. Justice League Action between 2016-2018 was the return of Kevin Conroy. It only lasted for 52 episodes and featured short episodes. It aimed also at a younger audience. An anticipated project that is in the pipeline is Batman Caped Crusader, which doesn't have had its premiere yet, nor how many episodes announced. J.A. Abrams and Matt Reeves are teaming up with Bruce Timm that made Batman popular with his Batman the Animated Series. It's said to be a reimagined series of Batman mythology. It's set to premiere into 2023. So what about the films? Well, we have got a Lego Batman. We got Batman in Space, Jamal New Legacy. Will Arnett reprise Bruce twice as the Caped Crusader in the Lego version. The latest in 2022 is Batman and Superman Battle of the Super Sons with Keanu Reeves voicing Batman. Batman and Superman Battle of the Super Sons had the return of Troy Baker. Safe to say is that Batman is a recurring regular character, showing up in several projects every year, and this time it's no different. Alright, we have covered the animated films of series, the live action films that are a couple by now. So what about the TV series following Batman? Do these exist? You might think, yeah, I know a few. Otherwise, this might be something new for you. Kind of a series, but it was a film serial. Short films with Lewis Wilson as Bruce Wayne, aka The Dark Knight, and Douglas Croft as Robin/Dick Grayson. He portrayed our hero back in 1943, 80 years back in 2023. It ran for 15 chapters in theaters, produced by Columbia Pictures. Something that had been permanent for Batman is Bat's Cave and the grandfather clock inside Wayne's Manor. In the series of films, Batman and Robin are secret agents for the government fighting a Japanese ring in Gotham City during World War II after the attack of Pearl Harbor. This serial of films was so popular that a sequel was produced in 1949. Batman and Robin, or New Adventures of Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin, or New Adventures of Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, was the sequel in 1949. It featured Robert Lowery as Batman and Johnny Duncan as Robin. In this series of 15 chapters, the Wizard was the main villain, challenging Batman and Robin. That Batman as a live-action TV series goes back to the dancing days with Adam West as the Caped Crusader and Burt Ward as Robin. We have already covered his, but this time we will go a little deeper. Batman the TV series ran for 3 seasons with 120 episodes. It features a gallery of villains, all from the comics. What stands out is the slapstick comedy. It covers years 1966 to 1968, meaning by 2023, the 5 years since it ended its run. It's also a milestone in how Batman has been portrayed over the years. What would Adam West be without this role? The series is by far a groundbreaking series. At the beginning of 1960s, Ed Graham Productions secured the rights to the comic books that have been released since 1939. 20th Century Fox wanted a hip and fun, yet still adventure show that was serious. William Dozier, who hadn't read the comics beforehand, concluded that the series needed to be a pop art campy comedy to make it work. Adam West and Burt Ward were screen tested against Lyle Waggoner and Peter Dial. West and Ward won the roles. For the first two seasons, the series was a tremendous success in the 1960s.
What does it mean, though?
Right, Commissioner, there's the problem. We all know how this quizzical criminal operates. He deliberately leaves clues to confound us.
Clues which may or may not lead to the real crime he's planning.
The real crime?
Precisely, Inspector Bash. The Riddler contrives his plots like artichokes.
And achieved popularity. The series has been on rerun, and both Adam West and Burt Ward have reprised the roles in several other series or had a cameo. A couple of spin-offs has been made based on the series. First off was the 1966 movie. Didn't succeed well in theaters in the United States, but sold well overseas. It also helped to extend the Season 2 and Season 3 budgets. Two other spin-offs based on the series are Batman, Return of the Caped Crusaders, and Batman vs. Two-Face, one from 2016 and the other from 2017. There have been a couple of Batman series. Those were the animated ones. In terms of the live-action Batman show, it's a thinner area for this character. We got Bruce Wayne in Gotham, a coming-of-age storyline that has like what Smallville was to Superman, meaning that we got the origin story that ends with a boy becoming this expected hero. Smallville ran for a longer period, but Gotham has 5 seasons spanned over several implications of who Bruce Wayne is. It's a series that also showcases each villain's origin and how they came to be. Alfred Pennyworth is also a big part of this series that ran between 2014 and 2019. Jim Gordon has also a major part of the show as well. Pennyworth had a spin-off series that ran for 3 seasons and was cancelled in 2023. That series featured a young Alfred Pennyworth based on Michael King's portrayal of the character in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy. King's character has a background in the British SAS. So what about Bruce? Well, at the end of the second season, an alternative version of Batman was born a man in the comics known as the Evil Owlman or Thomas Jr. In most iterations, this man is dead, but here he is gender swapped as Samantha Thomas Wayne. Moving on. Then we have Titans, which ran between 2023 and 2003. A series with 4 seasons and ongoing currently on HBO Max. It takes place in Gotham. We have Dick Grayson or Robin or Nightwing among the cast assemble, who tries to cut loose from Batman as his former sidekick. Even if the series takes place in Wayne's hometown, it doesn't focus all that much on Batman and his adventures. We know that Batman is a bad boy that people want to see more of, and it's coming in the future. In the latest edition of the newly re-established DC Comics and Warner Bros. Movies outside the DC EU, also known as DC Extended Universe, we also have Joker with Joaquin Phoenix by Todd Phillips. Bruce Wayne as a boy is included in the film for a brief moment. It also comes as a sequel to this film called Joker Folie à Deux, set to premiere October 2024. A film that was hyped into 2022 was Matt Reeves' The Batman with Robert Pattinson in the lead. This is the latest Dark Knight live-action film, 10 years after Nolan's concluded film The Dark Knight Rises. The sequel for The Batman with Pattinson returning is set for October 2025. We also have Gotham Knight from CW with Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl and Red Hood. It's set to premiere March 14, 2023. For those that are fans of P. Lovecraft, Warner Bros. Upcoming animated film Batman the Doom that came to Gotham will take on a darker turn. It's set in the 1920s era with a supernatural force in Gotham City. This film will also premiere in March but on 28. Batman will have a busy year in 2023. He will also show up in Flash. As mentioned before in this video, both Affleck and Keaton is returning. He is also due with an appearance in upcoming Aquaman The Lost Kingdom, which premiere in December in 2023. We also have Justice League War World this year, where his friends take on the villain Mogul. Justice League XRV by Superheroes and Huntsmen Part 1 is a crossover with an anime-styled version of Batman. After the new projects added from Warner Bros., we also have The Brave and the Bold, featuring Batman and his estranged son Damian Wayne as Robin. A film that doesn't have a date set yet. Batman the Caped Crusader, an animated series as mentioned before, has also not got a release date yet. It's still looking for a new distributor after leaving HBO Max. Matt Reeves is also involved with an untitled Arkham Asylum, a crime drama with a Gotham City police perspective. We got games, comics, movies, and series with our beloved hero. Like so many other characters, the fascination of Batman themes come in waves. His legacy has prevailed. There haven't probably been this many projects in the pipeline before. So, after several interpretations of this character, what's the fascination with him? How does a character who is so conflicted by seeking justice that produces remaking every decade? What's your take on the character? What's the best thing with Batman? As always, thank you for watching. Take care.